Hello, welcome to my final project for the honors component of the AMS 1060 HW class. Now, for this project I chose to try to complete prompt C, which was to analyze modern examples of Greek or Roman classical mythology being used in graphic design such as advertisements, logos, and other such media. Now, for my examples, I chose mostly different companies and brands. So for each example, I will name the brand, explain the references they make, and try to explain what the actual story behind the item or motif is. Now, for my first example, I chose the Aegis General Insurance Agency, which is a general insurance agency based in the US, to my understanding. Uh, and it just utilizes the Aegis both in its name and in its logo. The Aegis being a special divine shield, as you can see in this quotation from our version of Ovid's Metamorphoses that we read in the class, where Ian Johnston explains that it is, once again, a divine shield which has the power to terrify human beings and make them run away. It is commonly associated with Jupiter or Zeus and Minerva or Athena, and I think the first time it's mentioned in our version of the Metamorphoses, it's said to be on Athena, so that's something of note. But the reason why it's used here presumably is because, well, the Aegis is primarily a shield, and so, it shields you from your potential insurance concerns, and so on and so forth. Another thing about the Aegis that is worth noting is that it is often depicted as having the head of Medusa the Gorgon, or one of the three Gorgons, as being on it. In some version of the myth, of the origin myth behind the Aegis, it is said that Perseus, after slaying Medusa, gifted her decapitated head to Athena, which I suppose was how she utilized it for the creation of the Aegis. Now, the reason why this is relatively important is because I found an example of Medusa the Gorgon's head actually being displayed in modern graphic design, this time in the form of a logo, and the logo being that of Versace, the Italian fashion brand, luxury fashion brand. So as you can see, the logo is just her head. I do believe that it is being used in the context of the Aegis. This is simply her head. Now, there are many reasons why this might have been done. Primarily, it's an Italian company, so they've got some connection to Roman and Greek mythology. And secondarily, I mean, I guess could be more importantly, but Medusa, I believe, was supposedly quite beautiful according to myth prior to her becoming the creature that she was when Perseus slew her. So that might have been another influence and motivation for the choice for the logo. For my next example, I selected Pegasus Airlines, a Turkish airline company that explicitly references Pegasus, the winged steed from Greek and Roman mythology that was supposedly born out of Medusa's blood after Perseus decapitated her, as previously mentioned, along with Chrysaor, his brother, supposedly, who was, however, not a winged horse himself, but instead a human, a man, with, I believe, a golden sword, which is where his name is derived from. But yes, pretty explicit and pretty clear why they would select Pegasus as the reference of choice, considering it is a flying creature of mythic fame, supposedly very reliable and heavily involved in helping the gods and the heroes sometimes. Now, for my next example, I selected the world-renowned sports shoe and sportswear brand Nike. Now, both its name and logo are inspired by the Greek goddess Nike. I believe that's also how her name is pronounced. But in Latin, her name is Victoria in terms of her Roman counterpart. The logo is in fact meant to represent her wings because she was often and is often depicted with wings. Uh, so she was also worshipped by a lot of athletes in ancient Greece. So she's the goddess of athleticism, victory, and sports, I suppose, kind of indirectly at least. Hence why they also chose her name and wings to represent the company and brand. Now, for my next example, which I'm pretty excited about, I didn't even have to do too much research, at least to discover it, because my next example is Europa Park, the amusement and theme park in the south of Germany. Rust, I'm not sure how to pronounce the city's name, but it is there. It is called Europa Park, and obviously that is an explicit reference to Europa, uh, who is often proposed to be the namesake for Europe, the continent. Um, Now, there's no obviously the reason for this is that it relates to Europe and not directly to Europa herself, but still the reference is there. And another interesting reference to Greek mythology that is found within the park, not just within the marketing material for it, or its logo and brand and so whatnot, is the water roller coaster Poseidon ride found within the Greek territory of Europa Park, which is divided into a lot of little national sections where they have themed rides and other amusements. For my next example, I chose Ajax Cleanser, which is a cleaning product, and obviously its name is an explicit reference to Ajax, the mythical Greek hero who was involved in the Trojan War and who was supposedly the second strongest Greek warrior involved in it, second only to Achilles himself, which is why supposedly he felt so humiliated after he failed to receive Achilles' armor, um, and therefore committed suicide by impaling himself on his own sword. Tragically enough, because he was considered pretty great. But the reference, I assume, was made because to imply that the cleaning agent is so strong that that its cleaning powers rival the battlefield prowess of Ajax. So there we go. Now, to my final example, I have chosen to use Argus Media, which is a media company that provides and sells, well, and obviously, therefore, initially gathers information about, well, a lot of things: market data, business intelligence, prices of commodities, and so on and so forth, and a lot more, right? Naturally, the name Argus is therefore very fitting because Argus was a giant, or not, but regardless, yeah, he was a being with 100 eyes, that is for certain. And as we know, he was a servant of Juno, who was tasked with guarding Io after Zeus sexually assaulted her, which can be seen in the painting on the slide. That is Argus guarding Io, or just keeping an eye, or all of it. Well, I don't know. Well, now he's sleeping supposedly, and Hermes or Mercury is preparing to decapitate him. But this is taking place, I assume, while uh, Argus was still guarding Io. Um, Obviously, quite fitting because he is a creature with 100 eyes, as previously mentioned, and Argus is a company that keeps track of a lot of different factors and different pieces of information across a lot of different industries. So naturally, it makes sense that them being so involved in observation and the tracking of things that they would choose Argus as the inspiration for their name and brand. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and your time, and have a good day.